There are a lot fewer two-parent families.
What's worth more, a dollar today or a dollar tomorrow?
Almost nobody gets out of love alive.
Prisoners' rights is out of sight, out of mind.
Is your brain on God?
You ain't ready to apply.
There are discussions
how
as
they thought
black families have to have them.
What's worth more, a dollar today or a dollar tomorrow? What's worth more, a dollar
All right, I want to actually turn the page for a minute because there was a topic I did want to get into. Cyntoia Brown's story. You guys are familiar with her story? I think, what was it, back in 2004, where she was arrested because of she apparently was a prostitute. Is that what it was?
Right.
And she was being, she was, a gentleman solicited sex from her. I think he took her back to his place, and whatever happened while they got there, she wound up shooting him and killing him. And the way that the story, the way that I understood it, she was convicted of, I don't know if it was, I'm sorry, correct me if I'm wrong, it wasn't, what was it, first degree manslaughter, if I'm not mistaken? And also, and it was burglary too, right? Or robbery too.
I'm not sure of the degree, like for murder, but it definitely was murder.
Okay.
Whether it was manslaughter or, but a homicide did occur.
Okay, and I wanted to be clear that also the robbery, she was convicted of the robbery as well, which is also key because the way that the story is going, she was subsequently sentenced to life imprisonment. And the question is, being that she was 16 years old, was it cruel and unusual punishment? So, again, this was back in 2004. I think recently, a few years ago, I think she had, tried to appeal it, and her appeal was denied, stating that it was not considered cruel and unusual punishment.
So the appeal was denied about two or three weeks ago.
Oh, really? Was that recent? Okay.
Yeah, it's that recent.
Yeah. And they said it wasn't cruel and unusual punishment. Now, my question is, how do you feel about that situation overall to you?
I'm going to give context to Cyntoia Brown because anybody that's listening that has no idea is going to be like, well, what the fuck is the problem?
Gotcha.
She deserves to be in prison.
Gotcha.
So Cyntoia Brown was 15 actually at the time of the crime. She was a victim of molestation and rape. Her mom, I believe, abused drugs, specifically crack, while she was pregnant with her, and left her at friends' houses. And eventually, I think one of the family friends just ended up doing like a hood adoption, like you can just live with me.
Right.
And family members of the family friend were abusing her as well. She had several boyfriends that forced her into prostitution and pimped her. And at the time of the murder, I forget the boyfriend's name. He was significantly older than her. I want to say maybe 20. He, pretty much told her, like, you're going to go out on that street and get my money and don't come back. And if you do come back without money, like, it's your ass.
Wow.
So she gets picked up by this 43-year-old white man. He takes her back to his home. They have sex. And this is a girl that's been abused her entire life, was used to getting picked up by Johns and getting her ass kicked. And the way she told the story in her documentary, it's actually on YouTube and it's free, is that they had sex and they fell asleep. And he jumped up, or he moved, and she had saw the gun in his house. He had the gun out in the open, which to me was weird, but I'm not victim blaming. And she literally feared for her life, and she fired and killed him. Now, in the midst of all that, the robbery charge that you brought up, she leaves the scene of the crime and she takes his wallet. So it goes to trial, and they try her as an adult, which is key. It's just not a kid that was tried in kiddie court that was sentenced to life in prison. They stress the fact that if she feared for her life, why did she steal his wallet? Right. And my counter argument to that was she probably didn't think she was going to get caught, and she feared the pimp more than the guy that she just put 2 bullets in.
Question though, real quick, because wasn't it slightly more than the wallet? Because it was, I think, the
And
wallet.
some, I think they
Two
said some
guns,
firearms too.
Was
With
it?
some firearms that she actually had
and
taken as
I
well.
think
Oh, you may be
maybe the
right. You may
truck,
be right.
and maybe the truck too.
The truck.
I think she
Did
took the
did she
keys or
take
the
his
truck.
truck?
I know they
I don't remember.
definitely mentioned the keys. I don't
She
know
may
because
have
I read multiple
taken.
stories.
I'll
Yeah,
say
She
what.
may have taken the keys to his truck, but I don't recall. And that's my
so
own
that's
ignorance.
true.
I don't recall whether or not she took
That's
um,
true. Okay.
the actual truck. So she ends up getting sentenced to life in prison. And at the time in 2004, it was legal to sentence a child to life imprisonment. Recently, I think as of in 2009, 2010, don't quote me on that, the Supreme Court overruled that and stated that sentencing a child to life imprisonment without the chance of parole is cruel and unusual punishment. Now, her lawyers heard that. Now, how it works with the Supreme Court is this is what the Supreme Court says, but each state has their own Supreme Court. You have to plead your case before them and say, listen, this is the statute that just came down from federal. What's going on? They went to court, they appealed it, and the Supreme Court in Tennessee stated that it's not cruel and unusual punishment because the reason why Cyntoia was sentenced to life wasn't because of self-defense. It was because she killed the man and then stole his wallet. So that's how they're circumventing and getting away with keeping her incarcerated.
Gotcha.
So
Interesting. So, Dane, are you familiar with the situation?
I
Beyond.
am.
Okay. So, give me your take
Some of
on
the
it.
information is different because I remember like even the fact that I heard in one story the reason that they, I guess the judge, one of the judges in the appeal court, said that it wasn't cruel and unusual punishment for the fact that it wasn't fully a life term because she's offered parole, but the parole is now offered until like 50 something years. So she'll be
and
60 something. And so it was a technical reason why they're saying that it wasn't necessarily a life sentence. That's why it's not cruel and unusual punishment.
and that's
Which is bullshit either
completely
way. To me, that's still
that's
bullshit.
Yeah, that's
bullshit.
interesting.
That's completely bullshit. She's eligible to be paroled when she's 67. And let
Oh
me tell
wow.
you about parole. There's this one of the students in Otisville that I know. He was sentenced to. I'm not going to put his business out there. Let's just say, for example, he was sentenced to 30 years. 30 years to life. That means when you get to 30 years, they can parole you. But what they don't tell people, and what a lot of people don't know, is they can deny you parole based on the nature of the crime.
Oh,
What the crime
wow.
is.
Just simply by the nature.
Now, just simply by the nature of the crime, you can go before the appeals board and say, hey, I've been the model incarcerated person. I've got my degree. I don't have any infractions, blah, blah, blah. And they can look at all that and say denied because of the nature of the crime.
Right. And the thing also messed up about this story is not just the fact that, the Supreme Court also said it was cruel and unusual punishment to, I think, anybody under 16 to get life. It was also that the child prostitution part, they said if you're under 16, now you are considered a victim of sex trafficking. So technically, under those, and this was after she's already sentenced. So on top of that, what originally set her in that situation, she is a victim of by those same standards because this happened when she was 15. So that is another aspect that makes this whole situation fucked up because now you got two things that changed since her case that would in if it happened now, it would probably reflect a little bit differently on her actual case.
Oh, of course. And none of the judges involved and none of the prosecutors involved are gonna admit that we kind of fucked up and we have the opportunity, we have wiggle room to change it. No, they're not gonna do that. And something that you said, Dane, is so true. In the documentary, she's presented as like this teenage Lolita that like seduced a 43-year-old man, as opposed to this guy was a fucking pedophile. And I say that as no disrespect to the family, that's alive, but this guy was doing something illegal as well. And I'm not saying he deserved to be killed, but if we're gonna cast light on everything, let's cast it everywhere.
Well, let me ask the question now. Do we know that he knew what her age was?
I mean, ignorance of the crime doesn't negate the fact that it occurred. Probably not.
No. Well, okay. So, and you're right. Let me just be clear on that. What I'm saying is, there's a difference between a 43-year-old man knowingly soliciting sex from an underage girl and one who's soliciting sex from a prostitute who he thinks is, of age, and finds out later on that she's not that age. I'm not excusing it. I'm just saying
you're absolutely right, but either way, it's still illegal. Prostitution isn't legal.
Well, I mean, it depending on where you are. It's from
They were in Tennessee, sir. Do not do that.
Right.
Do not do that.
No, all right, let me stop.
There, but no.
Okay, so
Oh,
it's interesting. I want to go back to what you mentioned before about, because of course the argument is there's people who feel like just simply because of the taking of the wallet and the firearms and possibly the vehicle, I'm not sure about that part, is what it made it seem like, as if this wasn't a self-defense thing. It might have been a robbery, like one of those things.
Oh yeah, of course. And to be fair, if I was a prosecutor, that's how I would argue it. It looks like a robbery.
Okay, so
Gone wrong.
and then your kind of a little bit of an explanation that you put out there was maybe she was more afraid of her pimp than of the individual that she just killed, right? Okay, so with that all being said, do you think that this is more of an issue of, well, first, her legal team? Was this appointed counsel? Do you know that, if there was appointed counsel?
I believe it was appointed counsel. I watched the documentary over 6 months ago, so it's a little rusty, but her legal team fucked her over.
And that's what I was going to say. Isn't this more about of a situation of a poor legal defense than, because
I would say yes too. Because I know she didn't even take the stand. I think, right? She didn't. She wasn't.
They told her. Her legal counsel told her not to, which, in my opinion, was a big mistake. They were worried about her story getting picked apart, and she made a good point. Like, it's the truth. There's nothing to pick apart.
Right.
And there was no information about, like, because I think she saw a therapist as well in between that who assessed her and assessed her situation.
The therapist fucked her over as well, because instead of harping on the fact that she was a victim of sex abuse and molestation and rape, they played up the fact that she confessed to murdering the guy.
Well, interesting.
And so once the jury hears that, they confessed. All right, as opposed to, listen, these are the mitigating circumstances that made her this way, blah, blah, blah. It's just, everybody failed her. Her parents failed her. The foster parents failed her. The system failed her, and it's sad.
And the thing is, she confessed to the murder. She never denied that, but she claimed as self-defense, which was the part that wasn't really put out there, I don't think. Because they kept on trying to frame it as a robbery instead of self-defense. The prosecution side, anyway.
The issue with her confessing is, they record the phone calls in prison. And she's a kid. I think she was still 15 years old at the time. Nobody knows this. And she was talking to her mother, and her mother's just like, listen, stay positive. Right. I don't think and she's just like, Ma, I executed a man. They're not gonna let me. They're not gonna let me out. And once that was the shot heard around the fucking world. Once I saw that in the documentary, and I already knew the outcome, I'm like, oh, it's over.
Right. Right.
And I believe where the murder occurred, I think they moved it out of the county into a wider area. Yeah. So you have this young girl that's I don't want to say illiterate, but I think she was like a junior high school dropout. She's since, I think, earned 2 degrees just to shut her out. Right. But you have this young poor girl that is now pleading her case in front of like the wider areas in Tennessee. They don't give a fuck about her.
But doesn't she, if I'm not mistaken, isn't her mother white?
Yeah, she's
Biracial.
biracial.
Okay. All right. And then she she was given up for adoption or something like that. Is that what it was?
Yeah, it was sort of
Well,
like
she wasn't
a
giving out. It was a
she
family
wasn't.
friend.
It was a family friend that took her in, so it was off the books. Like it was never
Okay.
it was never anything legally
Okay.
done.
So,
You know, and then actually after she was sentenced to life, I think her mom is still in prison. Her mom got locked up for something.
Yeah.
Don't ask me what though. I forgot.
Drug trafficking, I think.
Yeah, there you go.
so then, see, let me ask you then, what would you think, if, because I know you have, a vested interest in it. I can see, how you're connected to it. My question would be, what would you think an adequate punishment for this situation would have been?
See, I even have.
Or do you even think she should have been punished to begin with?
I think she should have been punished, but even though I have an issue with the word punishment, because before I answer that question, what's the role of prison? What is prison for?
The way that I perceive it to be, this is you commit a crime, you have to do time for that issue. Once you're in there, hopefully they're rehabilitating you. So once you enter society again, things that got you into prison in the first place, you're not going to want to do anymore.
Well, I would, if I would answer real quick, I know from taking the other word for it, penitentiary, I know the original definition is supposed to show penitence for your crimes or your wrongdoings or whatever. That's what it's supposed to be.
Okay.
The original conception of it, anyway. But go ahead.
Rehabilitation doesn't occur in prison unless you have people that care and other programs and stuff like that. I bring that up to say this. Putting a child and throwing a child away, because that's essentially what they've done. I think she's 29 now. Throwing a child away is never the answer. Do I think that she should have done time? Absolutely. 10, maybe 15 years. And then in the course of those years, some sort of counseling and everything to reconcile what she's done, find a way, to pay back her debt to society. And also, this is when restorative justice, getting the family of the victim involved as well and present it to them like, listen, we understand that your loved one can never be replaced, but what does justice look like to you? What would Cyntoia have to do in order, not necessarily to gain your forgiveness, but to restore your family back to what it was? We can never bring your loved one back, but what can we do for you? I'm pretty sure none of that has ever been asked of the victims of the family. And everybody's always so focused on punitiveness, AKA punishment, that the victims get forgotten about as well. Because every time Cyntoia Brown's story is, recycled on social media or on the news, have you ever heard about the victim's family?
No.
No.
And I'm pretty sure that they're reading about it on social media and Instagram and Twitter and on the news as well. So all I'm saying is that, yes, what she did was wrong. Yes, she deserves and should pay back her debt to society. But it's inherently wrong to put a child away for life. Are you the same person you were at 15 or 16? I'm not. I was an asshole at 15 and 16.
Right.
You know what I mean? So by the time she gets out, the person that committed that awful act is no longer, that doesn't exist anymore. I just think it's really sad. It's really
so then
sad.
that would open up.
And I want to say that she's actually has done pretty well in prison as far as that goes anyway, as far as getting her degree and being a model prisoner by their standards. Where
Incarcerated person.
Incarcerated person, and I was gonna say something, I'll say it fast. But incarcerated person. By their standards, by the penitentiary standards, she's been a model incarcerated person. That it shows how she's doing better. You know what I mean? So that is part of growing up. You know what I mean?
Right. So I mean, I guess so. Then it's interesting. You say 15 years. Honestly, I wouldn't want to have an opinion on that again. The victims.
I mean, no, that was just a throwaway
I understand.
number.
And the reason I say that is because even if you go back to the idea of when this crime, how old age she was when this crime is committed versus now, totally different person. That's slippery slope too, because even if, let's just say she was 18, let's say she was 18, that 2 years, 2 year difference, would that have changed your idea about, the sentencing?
No, and that's only because of the information and that I've educated myself about, as far as the human brain doesn't finish forming until we're 26 years old.
Mm,
So if she was 21 when she committed that crime, I would still feel the same way. Now, you're 30.
gotcha.
I still don't believe that you should get life in prison, but I'm going to be a little, harsher on you. But a 21-year-old, a 25-year-old, I didn't get my shit together until I was 27, and I'm 32.
Mm,
So,
mm,
realistically, no. But like I said, I'm not sure if you were recording when I said this. A lot of us aren't educated about the criminal justice system, even though we make up the majority of the population of the criminal justice system.
mm, mm. Yeah, that's an interesting fact there as well. All right, so then let me ask this question: with all of the excitement over, I want to use that term, excitement. We're talking about a girl who's in prison for life currently, but with all of the attention, I should say, that
Mm-hmm.
this story was getting on social media, um, I wonder, you know, did Black Lives Matter, the Black Lives Matter movement, have anything to say about this situation? Do you know?
I mean, I first found out about Cyntoia Brown about a year ago, and it was through I follow Black Lives Matter, the organization, on my Facebook. They posted a screen cap of her documentary, and I just happened to be like, what? And I watched
Mm-hmm.
it. So that's how I found out about
Mm-hmm.
it. I don't necessarily know if it sounds like you're asking if they jumped on like the proverbial
Right.
bandwagon this time around. I can't answer that. But what I have noticed, and something that I spoke about with friends of mine, is this go around, a lot of social media stars and a lot of celebrities attach themselves to
Mm-hmm.
it, and said that they're going to do everything they can to help her, legal aid, whatever. But no one said anything when her appeal was denied.
Mm, mm, interesting.
So I'm just a believer in maintain the same energy. It's as simple as posting something like, "Hey, Cyntoia, stay strong." A guy sent her a letter. "We're not going to stop fighting for you." And then again, the counter that, we don't know what these celebrities are doing behind closed
Mm-hmm.
doors. Maybe they didn't want to celebrate something so negative. But either way, it's like I keep saying, it's
I
sad.
asked about the social media part of it, just to kind of figure out what was the overall, like, what's the sentiment? How are people feeling about it? Is it more people are feeling like this is
From
unjust, or
I mean, I don't know. Well, Dane probably doesn't know this because I'm not a troll, like, but I read
right?
comments. I get it in comments, and it seems to me to be 60% of people feel like she got a raw
Mm-hmm.
deal, and the other 40%, are on the punitive bus wagon. Like, look, she did what she did. She took somebody's life. Now she got to pay for
Mm-hmm.
it with her own.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, hopefully, with all of the attention that the situation's getting, something happens one way or another. I would hope that, just you know just to see that she gets the fair legal shot that she deserves. That, if people, some of these celebrities are hopefully trying to put together some defense fund for her. She gets
I
an.
mean, at this point, a defense, I don't know what that's going to do. I feel like the next step would for her to be pardoned, but I don't see that happening.
So is it that, with this appeal, is that it? Like, she really has no more appeals after that one? Is that what it is?
No,
Uh,
I think.
Say that again, Dan.
I think they can.
I only asked
appeal
because,
again.
I mentioned.
I'm not sure.
I'm wondering if, because of what you presented, Tia, about the fear of her alleged pimp, right?
Mhm.
Possibly being motivation for her to do whatever it is she needed to do after she, had killed this guy. That's
Mhm.
key. That's a key, point, to this situation. And then also, Dean, which you mentioned, I'm sorry, the legislation change you mentioned too, Tia, about where at the time, it wasn't against the law, but legislation has changed since then. That's another piece. And Dane, there was something that you mentioned also about the child trafficking situation. With all of this information, I would think that any lawyer worth anything would be able to put that together and probably present a better case. Not to say that she would be
I mean, they
And I
did.
do remember hearing
They
that.
said no.
really, really.
Yeah,
Yeah, 'cause I remember.
that was the appeal.
But and that was with a legal team funded. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm talking about a legal team, a real one, not just
I don't think the same. I'm pretty sure that they fired the lawyers that fucked up the first time. She, like I said, she's been in the media off and on for like the past decade, so I'm pretty sure she has a better legal team, but they still lost the appeal.
Wow. Unfortunate.
And I do remember, and this is why I was saying I think they could. I'm not sure if this was with the last appeal, but I remember reading a lawyer who wanted to volunteer, but he wanted to take it back to trial, I guess, by saying that the original trial lawyers were incompetent. For the fact
they were.
Yeah. So this was the last one, or this is a new version?
Well, this was the appeal. I don't think they were ever granted a new trial. I think that was thrown out as well. Now, I'm a little rusty on case law because I fucking hate it, but I'm pretty sure at this point I don't think they have any more appeals, but I could be wrong. But that's something I'll research when we're done.
Yeah, I might have got jumping with my information, so you might be right.
I'll tell you what, either way, it's an unfortunate situation. We will stand by and see what's going on with this story. Either way, hope everybody involved gets closure because it's an unfortunate situation anyway. But listen, folks, it's been a great show. Glad you guys were here to participate. Let me go ahead and thank my man DB. Also, thank Miss Tia. Listen, you were great today. Loved all the information you provided. Can't wait to see you back here at the Reality Gurus. How do you feel about it, though?
I had fun.
Did you?
I had a good time. I thought y'all were really gonna get in there, but y'all were nice. I appreciate that.
I'll tell you what. Cool. Well, this.
I was close. I was very close.
Well, this is.
Me and you one day.
Well, this is just the introduction. There's going to be plenty of shows involving you, so maybe we might go ahead and push that boundary down. But folks, if you like what you saw today, like, share, subscribe. Check the description box for any information that Ms. Tia, me, or Dane has put out there. I'm G. Cleve. Again, DB, Tia. Thanks for being here. Reality Gurus. Take care.